Temu, is it worth anything or is it a bunch of junk? Today I hope to answer that question for you with some of my personal experience with multiple kinds of Temu fishing gear. Now I'm a cheapskate, I like to get the best deal possible, and so I'm going to kind of talk about the balance between what is good and what is cheap and where you can meet somewhere in the middle. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now before I get too far ahead of myself, I do want to caution some of you guys. I personally have had some bad experiences with Temu, so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But as far as the safety of is it safe to shop with, I would be very, very careful. A lot of people have speculated that they steal your info and other things like that. So do your research and kind of come to that conclusion yourself. Personally, I had my card info stolen after ordering from Temu. So if you have to buy from Temu, I would suggest getting a prepaid card or something, like a gift card or something like that, and using that. That way, if somebody tries to take your card info, it'll be for a card you already spent all the money on. But now that that's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and go through a big pile of stuff that I ordered, and I'm going to tell you how much it cost. I'll put some pictures up on the screen of how much it cost from Temu, and I'll tell you how it worked or didn't work for me. All right, so first thing up, I've actually made a short about this, is a collapsible fishing pole. Now, I do have these little things on here. I'll talk about that in a minute, but it's a very lightweight thing. I think the rod and reel combo was like $10 together. But basically, the way this works, it extends out not super far, but I believe that's about, well, I'm 5'8", so...
You need me to back up?
No, that's fine. This is about, I'm 5'8", it's about as tall as I am, so I'd say it's about 5'8". And the casting action is pretty decent, the reeling is decent, the line it comes with is suboptimal. I would not use this for bass, I would definitely restring it. But we're going to talk about some string in a little while. All in all, I have caught a catfish on this, I have caught a bass on this. There's a very small bass and a small catfish. I've caught tons of bluegill. This is my go-to bluegill pole. I will collapse this, stick it in my car, and then if I ever see some fish, I can go fishing with it. So the rod and reel combo, definitely a steal. You're not going to get this for bass fishing. You're not going to get this for catfishing. It's pretty much going to be for doing a little bit of bluegill fishing, maybe you're fishing for perch, something like that. Other than that, it's kind of not the best. Now, there are other fishing rod and reels that I've heard great things about, but this specific one is really good for small stuff and for kind of having a compact fishing pole to bring around. Now, since I'm already on the topic of this fishing rod, I have a little float. It's one of these little styrofoam ones with the little plastic piece you put in. And then I also have these jig heads. Now, both of these also came from Temu. You end up with quite an assortment of other kinds of colors and patterns or whatever of these jig heads. The hooks come sharp, they come good, and then with the fishing floats, you have yellow, green, and like that orangish, pinkish color. I don't know how that's going to show up on camera, but it's like that fluorescent orange color. And so if you're wanting to get into some like bluegill fishing, this is a perfect setup for you. Super cheap, comes with all you need, and you can get fishing right away. Now, before I get into the actual baits and stuff like that, I'm going to talk about some other stuff. Now this, I have another one of these that I've used before. This one I've actually never taken out the packaging. Is a little floating live well that you can take with you. I do a lot of kayak fishing, and so if I'm fishing for fish to keep, I can have this tagging along behind me, floating on the water, and I can fill it up with fish. It's small enough to where you can fit bluegill in there if you're needing some bait, anything like that. It's pretty solid. It's got a wire outer ring to it, and then the string itself, like the netting, is actually very good nylon. So this thing was actually really good. Definitely a good purchase. And so if you're doing kayak fishing or you need like basically a portable live well that can go in the water, this is a great thing for you. These are two different kinds of bite detectors. So a bite detector is just basically something you put on your rod, and when you're getting a bite, it'll ring in some way. These things, you'll see them in a lot of my catfishing videos. It's just some bells that you clip to the tip of your rod. They ring like that whenever you get a bite, and that noise can get me from half a mile away. It gets me excited. Now these particular ones also came with these lights. So what you do is you'd open them up, flip the battery around, screw them back in, and then it brights up a light green. So I'm doing my night fishing, I can put these on there and I can tell which pole is getting hit when I have multiple of them out. So these things have been amazing. You can find the exact same thing on Amazon for about 3 times the price from the exact same company, exact same product, just triple the price on Amazon. So if you're going to buy from Temu, like buy these things. They're definitely great for catfishing. The other one, and this one I had never seen before, is one that clips on the bottom of your rod, and you loop the string through like this. Now, once it's turned on, when you get a bite and something pulls that string, well, this rod's not, oh, there it goes. It sounds like a car alarm going off. And so when you get a big bite like that, wherever you are, you're going to know you're getting a bite. And so this thing is, in my opinion, a little bit overkill. But if you're hard of hearing or you've got poles really far away from you, I would go with one of these instead of that bell. That bell, it can get lost with the noise of the wind. This thing is not. All right, the next thing that I have is a fish scaler. Now, I do a lot of bluegill fishing, and when they're real big, I'll keep them to eat, and you got to scale them. So this thing has some little ridges in the back and a compartment, so you sit there and you just sit there and scale it. Now, I have used this thing quite a few times, and it works like a charm. You can just use a spoon, but that gets scales everywhere. This little collection compartment is super nifty, and so once you're done, you can open that up, dump out the scales, rinse them out, and you're good to go. So I've got multiple of these things, and they have come in handy. So definitely, I would recommend if you're doing any kind of bluegill fishing and you're keeping them to eat, get you a little scaler like this. This thing was really cheap and has come in handy. I promise this is the last thing before I get to the baits, is fishing line. Now, generally speaking, I'm pretty picky when it comes to my line, but I decided to give this Temu fishing line a try, and I'm a braid all the way kind of guy, so I got 3 different strengths of braid. This one is 54 pound, this one is 40 pound, and this one is 106 pound. Now, I thought it was 120. I guess I'd misread it. But anyways, I have this on my big fishing pole, and I've caught sharks, I have caught big catfish, I've caught a 26-pound redfish, all on this line. Now, on this line, I caught a 23-pound redfish. I've caught some big fish, and this line has never failed me. So it's just the generic, whatever they have. I bought it. It was dirt cheap. I mean, you can get half the strength of line from the store for 3 times the price. So it was really good. I've spooled multiple fishing rods with this line, and it has never failed me. So definitely, if you're looking for getting a cheap string option, especially for braid, because braid can get very expensive, this stuff is really good. But now it's time to do what you probably all came here for, which is look at the different crazy lures that Temu has to offer. So I'm going to go through these pretty quickly and just show them off a little bit. The first one is a topwater lizard. This thing is really big, really weird looking, and it looks like an actual lizard. So they have multiple colors of these things, and they've got a whole bunch of different designs. For the most part, they all kind of have the same general look to them. They just kind of switch the colors up around. But the problem with these, and the problem that you'll find with a lot of these like really elaborate looking lures, is that they do fall apart. For example, this one I took out for one fishing trip, and then the adhesive that holds these 2 pieces together kind of melted and it broke. Now, that is pretty easy to fix. You could use some super glue or some epoxy or something to put it back together, but that's still not ideal. I mean, most of my fishing lures are made so they don't break, so it's kind of discouraging whenever you have a lure and it just breaks like that, especially if you don't just have super glue with you on hand. So there are some drawbacks to them, but for the most part, they look really cool, and I've only fished with them once, so I don't know if they catch fish or not, but they definitely look kind of cool. The next topwater bait I found was this little fish that swims, like the tail spins around, and it has a basically like one of those spinnerbait spoon things on it. And so that thing, again, I haven't used all these lures. When I bought them, it was not fishing season, and it was really cold, so the fish weren't biting too much. So I didn't really try these out too much, but I can eventually try that out. If y'all want me to do a Temu lure test where I go out and go fishing with all these lures, I could do that. But from the way I saw it swim when I cast it out one time, it looked pretty good. So I'm not going to give it my seal of approval, but I think it is worth trying out, and it wasn't very expensive. Now, what you'll see with all of these fishing lures is they have a paint job that isn't really painted. It's more of like printed on there. And so if you look really closely, I'll find one in a second, you can see that it's really pixelated, and it's got like a very much printery look to them. But, you know, it's something to try out for sure. The fish can't really inspect it that much. So the next thing I've got were a couple different kinds of lures. Now, these are kind of weird because they look like a muskie, but it's a whopper plopper. And I've got a couple different kinds of those. They were really cheap, and definitely a lot cheaper than whopper ploppers. And these things get some action. So Temu sells a few different kinds of whopper ploppers, and every single one of them that I've used has been really good, to the point where I've lost a lot of them to either gar that were really big that attacked them, or even some alligators at night when I've been out fishing. Those things are like a dinner bell to alligators. Alligators come flying up. You don't even see them coming. They smack that lure, bring it down, and snap your line. So if you're trying to catch an alligator, which I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to, but those are definitely the lures that gets their attention the most. The next thing I want to talk about are some crappie jigs that are a little bit bigger than the other ones, and they come with a spinner. Now, this is going to be the first product that I'm going to speak bad about. So that way you know, guys, I'm not paid by Temu. I'm not going to sit here and praise all of their stuff. These lures suck. I was going fishing with a buddy, and I was using these and some soft plastics, and I got a lot of action on it. But on a small, like 1 pound bass, the hook itself snapped. I got hung up on a lily pad, and the hook snapped. Many times it would snap right there at the bend. The metallurgy is really bad on these hooks in particular, and while they looked great, I lost so many fish because the hooks kept breaking or completely bending out. These I do not recommend. They're going to like, unless you are catching tiny crappie, this is just not the way to go. So those are going to go in the trash. Bass hooks. Now this is a little different. These are good hooks. So they're not perfect. Obviously, they're not going to be as good as your Eagle Claw or Mustad or any of your name brand in the United States. But if I can get this package open, it's just your regular, average, everyday fishing hook. They come pretty sharp. They are pretty strong. They don't bend too much. I mean, it's pretty much comparable to the other bass hooks that I've used, and a fraction of the cost. So this pack, I believe, came with like 50 of them, and they haven't failed me yet. So I think that's still a good thing to have. Line cutters. I got a pack of 4 for a few dollars, and basically I stick them in each of my tackle boxes, and then I'll just like try to have a couple loose in a drawer or something like that. Very useful to have, especially when you're fishing with braided line. If you're using like fluorocarbon or monofilament, sometimes you can bite that and break it, which is not recommended. But with braid, that's very difficult. So I always like to keep one of these little things. They're cheap. They're not the best. But if you don't have a knife with you, these are really nice. And they're very easy to stow away. So I would say if you have a knife or something, you don't need these. But if you don't have anything else, they're all right. I mean, I'm not going to say it's horrible, but I'm not going to say it's great. The next lure is this thing. This is like supposed to be a cicada or something, and these little things spin around. Now, I did take this thing fishing, and I'm going to be honest, I was very underwhelmed. I thought it was going to make a lot of really good noise, and it was going to attract a lot of bass, but to be honest with you, it didn't really get any bites, didn't attract much attention at all, and it was kind of underwhelming. So while it looks neat and is definitely a cool thing to have just like as a decoration or something, is like, look at this bizarre lure, it is not as usable as pretty much any other topwater bait that I'm going to go through. It just really didn't get any action. So I'm going to keep it just because it's cool looking, but I probably will never use this again. The next lure that I would use are these assorted frogs. Now, some people like the frogs that have those little skirts on them, but my dad swears by these ones that have the little legs on them. And if you buy them from Walmart or some other store, they're usually $8 to $10 a piece. But on Temu, it's like $2 a piece or something like that. Now, these ones have some hair in them. But these things work really well. They get lots of bites. I also had some where the feet would rotate and spin on the top of the water. I got tons of bites on those, but I could not find any of them. Most of this stuff I bought like 6 months to a year ago. I wanted to test it all out first before I gave it to you guys and gave any thoughts or any of my initial feelings on them. So I've tested these. They work really well. I got quite a few of them. Functions just the same as a frog, except it's a little mouse. And I would say it works a little bit less than the frogs do because they don't have 2 legs. It's just got that one little tail. But it still does work, and it's still a cool little thing to have. I have a lot of these little, they're supposed to be like some kind of cicada wake bait type thing. And they have that same digitalized looking paint scheme on. And they have a few different colors, a few different tops and bottoms, and all kinds of stuff. These things, they're pretty light. They're hard to cast with a rod that you have set up for heavier stuff. But The action leaves a lot to be wanted. I'll be honest, I don't like these. The hooks are really small for bass, but a little bit too big for bluegill. The action isn't great. It doesn't attract much attention. I'm not going to use these things again. It came in a pack of like 6 or something like that, but I'm never going to use them again. It was kind of a waste. They looked a lot bigger in the picture. I thought it was going to be like a good sized bass bait, but it was not. It's more of like a bluegill type bait, and it's really small. Not a fan of them. I wouldn't get them again. I don't suggest you get them. They just really didn't work out for me. The last thing is something kind of interesting. Oh, well, also, I should say, this bucket itself is a collapsible bait bucket. So it's a collapsible bait bucket. It collapses all the way down flat, holds a good bit of water in it. Good for like minnows or something like that. I wouldn't use it for bluegill or anything bigger than that. But it came pretty nifty. Stows away really easily. You can easily slide it into your tackle box or something like that when it's flat. And it was only a couple dollars. So definitely a cool little thing to have just to carry your bait in. And now the last thing is an automatic hook setter for when you're trying to catch bluegill. That it's a safe bet to say that this thing does not work very well. So I would say this thing, while it's a cool concept, it really doesn't work in practice. So I'm going to throw this thing in the trash. Anyways, guys, that's my list of the Temu stuff that I bought. If you have any of your personal experiences, drop them in the comments below. Maybe you've had some good stuff. Maybe you had some bad stuff. I know mine's been about a mix of 75% good and about 25% not so good. But to answer the question, will Temu fishing gear catch a fish? Yes, it will. Little tiny crappie on the Temu fishing gear. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Look how chunky this sucker is. He's been eating well. Just a little bluegill. If y'all want to see a video of the full pond transformation, that's on my channel. And you can see me kind of stock some of these little fish in there. This guy is fat. Look how chunky. We're going to let him back go. Let me know if you want to see a Temu fishing challenge where I only fish using Temu gear, or if you want me to test out some other gear like hunting gear or any kind of outdoors gear. As always, guys, Jesus loves you, I love you, and have a great day.